Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. This time next week, the window will have closed by a matter of seconds. Oh, yes. Well, we know the final week is usually the start of a frantic rush for deals. We are here for it. Kaveh Solokol, Dharmesh Sheth with me to talk you through everything that is moving because of a certain Alexander Isak. Well, Eddie Howe has seen a £50 million bid for another striker rejected as Alexander Isak's future hangs in the balance. They made a £50 million bid for Wolverhampton's Jurgen Strand-Larsen today, but that was rejected as Wolves say the Norwegian is not for sale. Keith Downey has more.
It's £50 million up front, no add-ons. Newcastle, of course, desperate for striker reinforcements. We all know the situation surrounding Alexander Isak. We still don't know yet if he will remain a Newcastle United player or move on this transfer window. Of course, they've been trying for other targets as well. Many of those deals have been stretched out, protracted. So they've gone to Wolves, attempted to bring in Strand-Larsen, but Wolves have turned that offer down today. They say the player is not for sale. It will be interesting to see whether Newcastle go in with an improved bid for the Norwegian striker. But clearly Eddie Howe looking for striking reinforcements. They don't want to overspend. I spoke to him just a couple of days ago in the build-up to this game. He says they don't want to overspend, but they know they need strikers in because they're playing not just in the Premier League this season, but they've got a Champions League campaign to contend with as well.
Yeah, Newcastle have kept us busy throughout this window. Kaveh, Isak, what's going to happen?
Well, I think the picture is going to become a lot clearer in the next 24, 48 hours, because if Liverpool are going to make another move for him, then obviously they're going to do it. But even if they were to make an improved bid, that may not be enough to get him out of Newcastle, because Newcastle have been very, very clear. They've got a valuation, and also they need to sign at least one replacement. Probably they need to sign another 2 forwards. So I don't think necessarily just because Liverpool are going to make an offer, that means he's going to end up being a Liverpool player. But I think just watch this space. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, the picture should become a lot clearer.
I think a big telltale sign was last week when Alexander Isak came out with his statement. What was particularly telling was the wording of Newcastle's response to that statement. They said that the terms and the conditions of the sale have not been met. So by simply saying that, there are terms and conditions for a sale. So they are prepared to sell Alexander Isak if a certain price is met and other conditions are met, i.e. them getting in replacements. They also said they don't expect those conditions to be met in this transfer window. That might be a way of telling Liverpool, in almost a thinly veiled way, you're going to have to raise your price, because if you do, there's probably a chance that Alexander Isak could still yet be sold in this transfer window because of how far it's gone between these two clubs. But it should be said here, and we have to reiterate it, Newcastle United's priority was to bring in replacements for him. Now, whether that will still be the case, because they seem to be running out of options as far as that's concerned. They've had another bid rejected today, even though that was more for a replacement for Callum Wilson. Are the strikers out there that are going to be able to replace Alexander Isak?
Well, let me ask you that. Are there the strikers out there?
Well, they wanted Hugo Ekitike. He's gone to Liverpool. And in a funny way, that might have made it more difficult for Liverpool to get Alexander Isak, because Newcastle United went all out to try and get him. They wanted Benjamin Sesko. They went all out to get Benjamin Sesko, but he wanted to go to Manchester United. So what other players can do what they think will be a similar job to Alexander Isak? Ollie Watkins was one that was mentioned. Kaveh's been speaking about Nicholas Jackson as well. It's whether the value that they get for those players this late in the window, because it's one thing them charging 130 to 150 million pounds for Alexander Isak. Two things will happen, because a club who Newcastle United are interested in one of their players in, they will say, well, we'll charge you at a zero.
Yeah.
If they wanted to. And also, they'll be like, well, you've waited this late in the transfer window to raise your price for Isak, so why don't we do the same to you, because we know you've got the money now.
There's about 5 or 6 clubs in the Premier League who are looking to sign a forward, and a lot of people in the sort of industry think that this sort of Isak situation is blocking a lot of deals, and we need to wait and see what happens with Isak before clubs are really going to move when it comes to signing strikers. For instance, if Isak stays at Newcastle United, Arne Slot has said that Liverpool need to sign another forward. So would that mean that they would look elsewhere as well? This sort of pool of forwards who can play for the top Premier League clubs is getting smaller and smaller. At the start of the summer, there were players like Liam Delap, João Pedro, who were available as well. But as the clock ticks, you're going to be left with fewer and fewer options. But let's wait and see what happens with Isak.
Where's your gut feeling? Where will Isak be come 1 minute past 7 on deadline day, a week today?
I think it would be good for football if he stayed. I think, you know, it's good for football that Newcastle carry on getting stronger and stronger. But obviously, we've been around the block a few times. We've seen this movie before, and more often than not, we know how it ends with the player getting what he wants. But on the other hand, I've seen a different ending to the movie as well, where the player sits down and signs a new contract and does a interview sort of saying, I'm really, really sorry, I had bad advice.
What do you think, Dharmesh?
I'm not going to sit on the fence.
Come on, what do you think?
I'm judging from what people in the industry are telling me, they expect him to leave. I would prefer him to stay.
What do you think, Dharmesh?
I keep changing my mind about it.
Nobody cares what we think.
And the thing is,
I care.
I think once today is out of the way, as Carve's mentioning there, they just want to get this game out of the way because it's almost become a saga and a circus leading up to this game where you couldn't have timed it. You couldn't have made it up that Newcastle United would play Liverpool on the Monday Night Football a week out from the transfer window end. I think there will be some sort of clarity later on this week.
Who will be without Alexander Isak, which is obviously good news for Liverpool, and it sort of adds to the arguments that people, especially managers, make that the window should close before the season starts, because then you wouldn't have these kind of situations where Newcastle are going into a really, really important game when their star player wants to join the opposition.
Hi there, welcome along to Transfer Talk. It's been a record-breaking window, and with 7 days to go, we look set for even more money to be spent. Alexander Isak is still a Newcastle player. Will he still be there next week? And the week is starting quickly. Arsenal are in the market for a defender as Bayer Leverkusen's Pierre Nketiah emerges as a top target. All of the talk surrounding Alexander Isak, who for now remains a Newcastle player. Mark, do you expect things to accelerate?
Yes, I think Newcastle will be active between now and deadline day next week. They do need to sign a striker. We know that Eddie Howe has said that they'd like to add strength and depth to that striking department. They're still trying to replace Callum Wilson, who of course is now at West Ham. And of course, Alexander Isak not involved with the first team squad as things stand. So this is absolutely an area of concern. I've said quite publicly, I think the work they've done in the window has been exceptional. But they just need that missing final piece to go in and play alongside Alexander Isak, which is what Eddie Howe would be hoping for. Or, to find replacements is almost impossible in this current market. All the big strikers have made their moves, so you're suddenly looking at other players that maybe not good enough. But I think there's going to be a huge week ahead for Eddie Howe. Crucial to get off on the right foot at home this season, because it's a hugely exciting campaign ahead with the Champions League back at St James's Park. So let's see how things develop. But I'm expecting Keith Downey to have a busy 7 days.
Mark Gay and Johan Wissa. Mark, we saw Mark Gay start again for Crystal Palace. Has there been any movement on that situation?
He's the captain of Crystal Palace and has been the captain there for a really successful couple of seasons there. I think it shows a lot about his attitude and his respect for the Crystal Palace fans, the fact that he is continuing to play despite the speculation about his future. We know that Liverpool like the player, and there has been, over the course of the summer, talks between Liverpool and Crystal Palace about a potential deal. But again, Palace have a valuation of their captain, their skipper, their leader, someone who is hugely important to that side in a team that is a little bit threadbare in places, and there has been a lot of departures. And of course, Liverpool will only move if they sense a market opportunity. The key thing for Gueye is he wants to play week in, week out between now and the summer because there is a World Cup next year. Game time is key. Is he going to get guaranteed game time if he goes to Liverpool? Absolutely not, depending on the players that may be ahead of him. He's going to have to earn the shirt in that Liverpool 11. So that's one player to keep an eye on, and a situation that I think might go right to the wire. And it just depends on who tests Steve Parish and Mark Gueye himself with a potential offer.
I'll be there on deadline day, so it could be a late finish for me, though the deadline is now 7 p.m. on Monday, so there may be a late deal sheet as well. In terms of Oliver Glasner, Kevin, we spoke earlier about him and how he's been at other clubs when it comes to maybe not being backed in the transfer window, not being given the funds. Can Crystal Palace afford to let Mark Gueye go if they're to appease one of the best managers in the world right now?
The issue's going to be letting him go without a replacement lined up. And if it does go right to the wire, are they going to have time to bring somebody in? This is the issue. I think he's realistic enough to know guys like Eze and Gueye were going to go. The problem is he doesn't feel they've been snappy enough in bringing players in to replace them.
You said they've been passive in this transfer window.
Yeah, and they've got this situation now. And I understand that they were unsettled by the Conference League versus Europa League, but I think he feels they could have been more active in the market. And if Gueye goes, I think he'll understand that. He knows how the food chain works, but if they haven't got anybody to replace him, I imagine that will infuriate him.
OK, Mark, with 1 week left to go of this transfer window, it looks like Newcastle are still yet to bring in a recognised striker. It'll probably be Anthony Gordon through the middle tonight in the Monday Night Football. How close are we getting to Johan Wissa joining the club, or has there been no movement despite the fact he wasn't involved again at the weekend for Brentford?
Yeah, I think there's two sort of situations at play here. There's the Johan Wissa situation with Brentford, and he's sort of expressed his frustration at not being allowed to leave. He wants to play Champions League football. At the age he is, he feels like this is a great opportunity. He wants to go to Newcastle United. However, Brentford have a valuation of the player. He has 1 year plus a club option, second year on his contract, so they still hold the cards in this regard. We know that there was a rejected offer from Brentford around £40 million from Newcastle last week. There's been no further development at this stage on that particular deal. Is it dead? No. Is it progressing? No. It's just in an impasse at the moment where I guess really the focus for Newcastle is, look, let's go and play tonight. Let's go and beat Liverpool. Let's go and get some points on the board. And then we can assess